Weight loss resistance and hormone problems have become a new epidemic in today's society. And look, in the past videos, I talked a little bit about this in indicating that it's cellular inflammation caused by toxins, in true cellular detox as being the ultimate answer. But, you know, I think this subject is so important that I wanted to bring it back to the board, because remember I said everything that's really important I want you to get to understand really well. Draw with me at home, please, because this is a concept that really I want you all to understand, because this is really the answer for why so many people don't feel well. So look, I'm going to bring you into the cell. That's a pretty darn good circle, so you might not nail it as good as I did at home. But anyways, okay, so that's a cell. You know, so when I talk about the inability to lose weight, or I talk about hormone problems, I said earlier in one of the other videos that, look, it's not about giving more hormones, although that seems to be the going answer today. It's not about that at all. We have to fix the cell to get well, and I've made that point many times, and we truly have to detox the cell to get well. So when you look at the cell, I talked about every cell has thousands, millions perhaps, of these receptors. Even to absorb a vitamin, like vitamin D, it has to attach to a receptor on the cell. So the cell is where the magic happens. But I said that this resistance to hormones is really the big problem, the big epidemic. So if these are receptors to hormones, and we're going to use thyroid hormone as an example, I'm going to use insulin as an example, because type 2 diabetes and thyroid problems are very, very big problems today, and growing problems, and both actually cause weight loss resistance, you know, in themselves. There's another hormone that I do want to discuss called leptin. That hormone is the hormone that actually tells your brain to burn your stored fat for energy. So it sounds like a pretty important hormone that you want to know about, I think, right? Okay, so these hormones, when they come in contact with these receptors, they bring a message into the cell. Matter of fact, they bring a message into where your DNA is, and then that nucleus in the DNA actually starts to make other hormones, other chemicals that we need to feel well. So when thyroid hormone connects with the cell, brings its message in the cell, you have good energy. You're an efficient fat burner, you feel good. When it's not, you don't feel so good. Believe me, many people experience this. And again, what is the solution today? Typically, we're giving more thyroid hormone. But again, when the thyroid hormone cannot connect its message into the cell, that's the real problem. Same is said for insulin. Type 2 diabetes, we know that it's not a problem with needing more insulin. They have plenty of insulin. The problem is the cell can't hear the insulin, and therefore then people are not getting enough glucose in the cell, and therefore their energy drops, they don't feel well, a lot of bad things happen, right? Same with leptin. Leptin is the hormone that tells your brain to utilize its fat. So imagine if I blocked that hormone from getting its message in the cell. What would happen? Well, you wouldn't be able to lose weight despite what you eat, despite how much exercise you do. That sounds like a problem. Well, this is a growing problem. So here is the real problem. Cellular inflammation. What happens is we hear all the things about inflammation is the cause of diabetes. The inflammation is the cause of thyroid problems, cancer, go on and on. Inflammation's at the root. And I said it before, we're not talking about a sore shoulder or a sore knee, although that is inflammation. We're talking about systemic inflammation in the cells of your body. That's the epidemic, that's the problem. So this inflammation in particular is on this membrane, and it blunts or blocks these receptors. So now the cell cannot hear the message from thyroid hormone, from insulin, or from leptin. Look, it's not about giving more hormones. I'm going to give you a great analogy that I hope you can understand. If you have kids, you'll definitely understand it. So when we shout at our kids, right, it works in the beginning. Well, so does giving hormones. So by taking more thyroid hormone, by taking more of this hormone or that, estrogen, testosterone, yes, it works in the beginning. It gets the message across. But what happens when we continue shouting at our kids? They stop listening, right? Or they become less and less sensitive, you know, to what you're saying. So that doesn't work. Matter of fact, you hear good books tell you, start whispering at your kids and watch what happens. Well, the same message here. We keep giving hormones, the cell literally becomes more deaf to the hormones. It's not a long-term answer. So ultimately what we have to do to get our kids to listen, in this case ourselves, is we have to reduce the inflammation. And folks, look, I give 3 major causes of inflammation. Obviously, glucose. You have to control glucose. That's why we want you to exchange your grains for others or get rid of them completely. We have to get rid of refined sugars, right? We have to get rid of all the sugars that we're eating, all these sweeteners that are in everything, because all of it drives inflammation. We talked about that. And even the bad fats, that drives inflammation. We talked about vegetable oils and how those are the bad fats. It's not the cholesterol and the saturated fat. I'm going to talk about that more in a minute. But also, the biggest one of all, and the hidden one, is toxins. Like no time ever in the history of man have we been exposed to the type of toxins that drive cellular inflammation more than now. We talked about glyphosate is the #1 herbicide used. It's ubiquitous in our society because it's in all of the foods that we're eating. And it causes leaky gut, but it's driving cellular inflammation. I talked a little bit about my story, how my silver fillings that contain 50% mercury drove inflammation in my brain and my cells and my brain cells. And ultimately getting rid of that was the answer for me getting my life back. My wife was loaded up with lead that went into my children. So I know a lot about how these toxins can drive inflammation. So there's multiple sources, even our cosmetics that have BPA, that not only drive cellular inflammation, but we know can change your genes and turn on bad genes, even obesity genes. There was a great study, Stanford University study, where they took certain toxins and they exposed it to identical twin mice, and they turned on the obesity gene in the mice. Didn't matter what they ate, didn't matter how much they exercised, those mice would not lose weight no matter what. Sound familiar? So we know this is when we get rid of the toxin. And by the way, methylation, they use something called methylation to change that DNA back. That's R number 5. If you go all the way back to one of the first videos, R number 5 is reestablishing methylation. But all of the 5 R's, which is the first component of what true cellular detox is, when you fix the cell, you can change that DNA back and turn off those obesity genes or turn off those genes that are triggered. I always say, look, you're fortunate because you're in an office that understands the 5 R's. They understand cellular healing. They understand that if you don't fix the cell, you won't get well. There is a gap right now in the scientific literature, in what's happening in the treatment world. And, really, I believe the 5 R's closes down that gap. In the scientific world, they're talking about, we know that we can turn bad genes on with toxins and express bad things. But it also talks about things that we can do to change that gene expression back. So if you're trying to fix a hormone condition or you're trying to feel better and you don't understand this epigenetic topic that I'm talking about, you're missing the boat. And that's the gap. We know that there's things that can be done to change that DNA back. And now we start expressing a different condition or a different feeling, good or bad. So the 5 R's, the first component, fixing the cell, really revolves around that. But look, this hormone resistance, this is why people don't feel well. Any one of these hormones and many more, when your cell's not hearing them, giving more doesn't work. The idea is we have to reduce the inflammation. The #1 way, yes, we want to make those dietary changes, but true cellular detox is the key because we've got to get this cell detox. When we fix this membrane, reduce that inflammation, now we can get the toxins out and we can get the good stuff in that makes you feel better. The hormones can now start to communicate with the cell again. So most people are in this state because they have certain toxins that have bioaccumulated in and around that cell that now are making the hormones not communicate. Do you see that? I hope you do. Because really this is how I got my life back. I understood. Remember the 5 R's, remove the sources. We have to do that, right? That's important. R number 2, regenerate the cell membrane. R number 3, these little mitochondria, these energy factories. This is where we produce the cell energy called ATP. These membranes inflame. We've got to get that down. And again, toxins come in and they start polluting the cell. It's like this. If you burn wood in your house without a chimney, your house fills with smoke, you die, right? Smoke kills more people than flames. The same thing's happening to your cell. This cell is not detoxifying, now the toxins are building up, driving inflammation, turning on bad genes, dropping your cellular energy. So we have to get rid of these toxins. We start at the cell. We start with the 5 R's. The products that we have in this program are all designed to fix this cell. Well, they're also designed to open up those detox pathways, but we have to start here. So this cellular energy, that's R3. R4 is reducing this inflammation. I think that's obvious. And R5 is reestablishing methylation, which plays a role in detoxing and protecting that DNA. So look, the bottom line is this. If we don't get rid of the toxins at the cellular level, you're never going to feel better. You know, this is how I got my life back. This is a real solution, and it really works. So I know that that's going to make a difference in your life, and you're lucky to be in the office you're in.